Hey guys, so I want to talk about what racial discipline disproportionality is, professional learning, for my classroom management course. I'm Jordan Pitts, and hello, let's get started. All right, so the definition. I really just want to go over what the definition is. This isn't from research. This is more so, this is my summary of the definition of racial disproportionality, or discipline disproportionality, based on what research I've done the entire semester. So whenever students of color are disciplined more often, including in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension, than white kids. So this is really what we are talking about for the next 3 professional learnings, where students of color are disciplined more than white students. So how did this start? So before I want to even go into this, I want everybody to take the implicit bias test. Basically, this is figuring out if you are biased towards one race over the other. And so it's really cool. I took it for my course and I learned a lot, but I would like everybody to do that. And then that would be where we would go off. They would do their own thing and then we would come back. Okay. So I also, after we've done this, I want to read this this quote. So one that recognizes the role that bias plays in the day-to-day functionings of all human beings. And so I really, after I took the implicit bias test, I knew that there was, I needed to change something. And so I just knew that it needed to be done. But the understanding that bias does come into our everyday lives you need to understand that. But even further than that, the fact that I thought that maybe this bias doesn't play into my classroom is complete crap, just to be frank with you. And so honestly, just making sure to recognize that within the classroom as well. So how does that impact my classroom? Basically in every way. And I want to read this quote. Discrimination occurs when teachers do not recognize that behavior is culturally influenced, when they devaluate, censor, and punish the behaviors of non-mainstream groups, and when they fail to see that their management practices alienate and marginalize some students while privileging others. The fact that I may have had I did have a bias towards one race over the other was alarming to me, and I'm glad now that I'm not ignorant anymore. And so I feel like it needs to start with that, and it needs to start with the teachers understanding that this can be helped. And so for us, this is good news, because even if we do have a bias towards one particular race over the other, now you know. And ignorance can be the biggest weapon that can be used against us in the classroom. And so just making sure that we are fully aware of what's going on in our classroom within all cultures. So is this recent? According to the new data from the Education Department, Black students from kindergarten through high school are 3.8 times more likely to be suspended than white students. So the fact, and I'm going to show you more research throughout these 2 or 3 professional learnings, but the fact that we can say, oh, well, this is not happening, that is not true. It is happening within our schools, not only in Georgia and not only within Oconee County, but also within counties across the world, or the United States. And so just making sure that that's like the basis of this, to say, okay, well, maybe I'm biased towards one race over the other, but that's just because I was raised that way. Even if that is your stance, that's not a good stance, because that is, it's a wrong way of thinking. And so just making sure that we are aware of this problem within our school systems, and just making sure that we understand that it needs to be changed. It's not something that is okay just because, oh, you were raised that way. That's not okay. So here's some stats that I was talking about. So that was one stat, but these are the ones that are pretty impactful for especially us. So just going through these, and I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but I'm talking about the stat blacks as percent of students enrolled in public schools. So there are 24% of blacks enrolled in public schools. But then let's look at these two stats here that say blacks as a percent of students suspended from public schools. So why is this more than the percentage of students enrolled in public schools, or black students enrolled in public schools? Looking at Georgia, so here we have it based on gender. So black percentage of females suspended and expelled. So in Georgia, that's the one we're looking at right here. Black percentage of suspended girls is 73%, whereas they are expelled 65.1%. And then boys here, 64.2 are suspended and 63.1 are expelled. And so I really just want to hone on this is a problem, and this is not something that we should just brush under the rug and oh well, it's not happening in our school. Well, number one, I'm going to break that down and that barrier, because that's not true. But also just really realizing that, okay, yes, it happens in our school, but it's something that we can change, and this can be more than numbers. So why is this happening? So I really want to start with this. It's happening because if we're going with the story of, oh, I was raised that way and I'm in a bubble. Well, yes, we are in a bubble and we may be in a bubble, but that means that it starts with us. And that's really what I'm getting to. So referrals to the office depend upon both the severity of the student's behavior and the teacher's perception or the tolerance of that behavior. And that touches really close to home for me, because you have to understand that it's not just the student, and this is not just the student's fault. So really just getting that bias out of your mind, and that's why I had you take the implicit bias test before. But there's really, and if you read the bottom, I'm not going to read it, but if you read the bottom one, it's really talking about the difference between white and black students and how some of their behaviors are, for the white students, are seen as they're sent to the office less frequently than the black students who would do something that is less harmful to others and more offensive. So I want to watch this video. It's a video on these students who are talking about how they are suspended in their experiences. And I'm not going to show it on here, but the teachers would do that. All right, so after talking about that, I want to really reflect, or I want to watch this other video because that one was short, but I want to watch this TED Talk. It's by Rosemary Allen. She is a wonderful lady. She talks about school suspensions as an adult behavior, and so she also talks about specifically the racial influence that it has. She is an African-American lady, and she talks about how teachers saw her and how she was suspended in school at a very young age. And so I really just want us, I have some questions here. I want us to just go over them and think about them before we watch the video, and then after we watch the video, I want to talk about them. So is there something that in the video that you can relate to in comparison to your classroom? If yes, what is that behavior? And is there a behavior that you're imposing in your classroom that makes it less equitable and a safe environment? And do you teach whenever students misbehave or punish? If punish, what changes can you make in your classroom to teach instead? And she talks about, this question is more specifically geared towards the video, and so I'll pause it and we'll talk about it during the video. All right, so then the teachers would watch the video, we would talk about it, we would have a discussion about it. And then now, so positive, and after we talked about this, I also want to encourage you. So don't get discouraged, because I know that we've talked about some stuff that's hard, and it's more so like, oh, pointing fingers. But the thing is I'm pointing my 3 fingers right back at myself, because I'm in this right here with you. And so I also am trying really hard to make a change within my classroom, but I know that it's not perfect, and after this professional learning, it's not going to be overnight, but it can happen, and I want you to see that. So this says in the quote, positive school climate has been found to be associated with lower rates of school misconduct and discipline. So since we have PBIS in the class, or in the school system, I really think this is a way that we are all actively trying to stay positive within our classrooms, and I really think that's the first start, or the first step to getting started in this, making those positive relationships with the students, and with just having that connection with them as well. All right, and I'm done.